at these men. Look at their faces. They are walking off that beach with their heads down, shoulders dropped, eyes on the ground. These are not ordinary men. These are some of the fittest, strongest, most determined human beings on the planet. Olympic athletes. College football champions. Men who have trained every single day of their lives for this one moment. And they are leaving. Not because someone kicked them out. They chose to leave. They walked up to a small brass bell, rang it 3 times, and quit. And here... quitting anything the same way again. The place you are looking at is called Naval Base Coronado in California. And the training happening on that beach has a name. Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. Most people just call it BUD/S. Military experts from around the world agree on one thing about BUD/S. It is the hardest military selection course that exists anywhere on Earth. It runs for 24 weeks. But buried inside those 24 weeks is one single week that destroys almost every man who attempts it. They call it Hell Week, and the name is not an exaggeration. For 132 hours, which is 5.5 days straight, these men are pushed beyond anything the human body was ever designed to handle. They run over 200 miles. They do more than 20 hours of physical training every single day. And for most of those hours, they are in the Pacific Ocean at night, where the water is sitting at around 14 degrees Celsius, cold enough to make your muscles stop responding, cold enough to make your mind go completely blank. The instructors do not sleep either. They rotate in shifts so that there is always someone fresh and aggressive screaming in the candidates' faces. And just when a man starts to warm up, just when his body starts to come back, an instructor walks over and pours a bucket of ice water directly over his head. And the entire time, standing right there on the beach, there is a brass bell on a wooden post. Anyone who wants to stop, all they have to do is walk up to that bell and ring it 3 times. Warm food is waiting, a hot shower, dry clothes, it is all right there. In a normal Hell Week class, more than 70% of the men ring that bell, 70%. And here is the thing that should stop you cold. These are not weak people quitting, so why are they leaving? This is the part that changes everything. In 1988, the United States Navy brought in a team of psychologists and gave them one job. Figure out what separates the men who make it from the men who do not, and what they found shocked everyone. The men who quit were not failing physically. Their hearts were still beating fine. Their muscles still had fuel. Their bodies were not. They were quitting in their minds before their bodies actually gave out. On average, when a man felt 100% finished, completely empty, absolutely certain he had nothing left, he was actually only 40% used up. 40%. That means 60% of his capacity was still sitting there untouched, completely available, and he never reached for it because his brain told him it was over before it was over. The Navy started calling this the 40% rule, and it became one of the most important discoveries in the history of military psychology. Your first feeling of done is a lie. Your body has a second wind, and a third, and a fourth. The only problem is that reaching those reserves requires you to completely ignore the loudest voice in your own head. A former Navy psychologist named Dr. Eric Potterat spent years studying the men who survived Hell Week and the men who did not, and he found that the survivors all shared 4 specific mental habits. The first one was goal setting, but not the kind you see on motivational posters. These men were not thinking about graduating. They were not thinking about the next day. They were breaking time into the smallest possible pieces. Just survive until the next meal. Just get through the next 20 minutes. Just keep moving until the sun comes up. That is it. Nothing beyond that. The second habit was visualization. Before each brutal evolution, the men who made it would close their eyes for a moment and mentally walk themselves through completing it successfully. They saw themselves finishing before they started. The third habit was self-talk, and this one is important. Not motivation, not inspiration. Hard, specific, practical instruction to themselves. Keep your arms up, breathe slowly. One more step, move your legs. Simple commands, repeated over and over, drowning out the voice that was telling them to stop. The fourth habit was what the psychologists called arousal control. The ability to slow your own breathing, drop your heart rate, and stay mentally clear when everything around you is chaos and pain. None of these four things show up on any fitness test. None of them can be measured in an interview. The only place they appear is under real pressure, which is exactly why Hell Week exists. Now, let me tell you about one man specifically, because his story will stay with you. His name is David Goggins. By the time he reached the point in Hell Week where most men break, his feet had swollen so badly inside his boots that he could barely walk. His legs had open sores from constant exposure to salt water and sand. His hands were cracked and bleeding. His body was sending him every possible signal that the human nervous system can generate, all of them saying the same thing: stop. Stop now. This is enough. And he looked at that brass bell and he said something to himself. You are not going to ring that bell. You do not get to ring that bell. And he kept moving. He made it through. But here is what Goggins said years later that nobody expected. He said that some of the men who rang that bell were actually tougher than the men who stayed. Physically tougher, mentally tougher. They had more in the tank than some of the guys who graduated. The only difference was that they had not made the decision yet. Because at the end of everything, Hell Week is not a test of the body, it is a test of a decision. It is asking one question over and over for 5.5 days straight. How much do you actually want this? Not how much do you think you want it. How much do you want it when wanting it costs you everything? Here is why I am telling you this, and it has nothing to do with the military. Every single person watching this right now has their own version of Hell Week. It might be a business you started that is bleeding money, and you are not sure how much longer you can hold on. It might be a situation at home that is breaking you slowly, and the easy exit is right there in front of you every single morning. It might be something you are building, something you are trying to become, something you have been working toward for years and it still has not arrived. And there is a moment that comes in all of those things, a moment where your mind rings the bell before your body does, where the discomfort becomes loud enough that the exit looks completely reasonable, completely justified. Nobody would blame you. That moment is not the end. That moment is the 40% mark. The Navy SEAL did not discover that their candidates had some rare genetic superpower that ordinary people do not have. What they discovered was that almost every human being is walking around every day with 60% of their capacity completely untouched because they have never been pushed past the first voice that said stop. The men who wear that trident are not special because they do not feel the pain. They feel everything you feel. They are special because somewhere in the middle of the worst night of their lives, they made a quiet decision that the pain was not a good enough reason to stop. If that idea lands with you the way it landed with me the first time I heard it, subscribe. Because this channel goes deep into how the world's most elite military minds think, train, and operate, and there is a lot more coming. And I want to hear from you directly. Have you had your own version of that moment? The moment where you almost rang the bell? Tell me in the comments what it was and what you did. Every single comment gets read.